Hello everyone, it's Nina and welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be doing the sequel and probably final part of my Dr. Stone manga reading vlogs. If you haven't seen my first video, I will link it somewhere up above. But over the course of the last couple months since I filmed that video, I've been reading like a volume or two every once in a while, and I just got to the end of a arc and I'm about to start a new one, so I thought we could do a reading vlog for that. I think I honestly might continue on from the point I'm at right now to finishing the series. Because as I'm recording this, I think that the last episode of the Dr. Stone anime is like coming out very, very soon. So I figured this would be like the perfect time for me to also like get caught up and read all of the manga. So I think I'll start off by getting you like quickly caught up with where we are at, and then I'll talk about the volumes I'm going to be reading for this video. So in the end of my last reading vlog, I think we were at volume 9 to volume 10, basically the end of the Kingdom of Science versus Tsukasa Empire arc, where Tsukasa was then defeated and basically like put into stasis so that the main characters could figure out a way to revive him. The next major arc, I believe, is officially called the like Treasure Island arc, which goes from volume like 11 through around 16. And this is pretty much everything I read off camera. Basically, the plan is they're going to find a way to petrify Tsukasa and then revive him, because the petrification process like heals all the wounds a person has. And for that, they're going to go to the source of the petrification. The first stop along the way is they actually end up going to the location where Byakuya and the other astronauts, their space capsule landed when they first came back to Earth after the petrification incident. But when Senku and his crew end up getting there, that island is actually inhabited by a different group of humans that have like descended past from Byakuya and the other astronauts, but have kind of like gone no contact with Kohaku's village, so they're not really super connected or like know about each other. But they actually have a petrification device that they use to then petrify the majority of Senku's crew. There's only like 4 or 5 people that make it out, but this ends up kind of working in their favor because now they have a petrification device that they are going to try and steal for the sake of then using it on Tsukasa to revive him when they get back to the main village and everything. Which is basically what happens. They end up working with some of the other inhabitants of the island to kind of overthrow the like evil, shady assistant to the head of the island, who's actually been this kind of like puppet leader this whole time. They end up bringing the petrification device back. They basically have like one last charge on it, which they use to petrify Tsukasa and then revive him afterwards with the revival fluid. And now they have basically figured out that the source of the petrification is a signal that's actually coming from the moon. And Senku, in his like classic crazy fashion, is like, oh, so then we just have to go to the moon. And the roadmap to doing that basically means they have to restart the entire space program, which means they need a lot more resources and a lot more people. So the first step that we are now going on with the new arc is they're going to be going to North America because they need the cornfields that are native there to make a lot more alcohol, since that is an essential part of the revival fluid. And then I think from there, they're going to go to South America because that is where they determined the initial petrification beam light, like 3,000 years ago originally came from. So with that quick wrap up out of the way, we are now going to be starting with volume 17. In this one, the crew is now on their ship and is traveling across the Pacific Ocean from Japan to North America. I have a couple volumes out from the library besides 17. I also have 18, 19, and 20. So I'm going to read at least these 4 for the video. But I think probably depending on how much I want to read, I believe in total there's around like 26 of the main volumes and I think 1 extra. So I think I can easily get through all of these that I have checked out, and then I will go ahead and request more from the library so we can kind of finish off the rest of the series. So yeah, that is the plan for this video. I hope you guys enjoy, and let's go ahead and get right on into the reading vlog. So we have made more progress in reading Dr. Stone, and I'm just having the best time. I love the arc that we've just started, and I love all of the characters that we're getting introduced to. So I recently finished volume 17. This was a little bit of a filler volume as the characters are making their way across the ocean from Japan to North America. There was a very cute scene of Francois kind of making themed mocktails around each of the characters, which, if you know anything about me, I absolutely love anime cafes with themed foods and themed drinks that are based on characters. I think that is so fun. So the fact that there's kind of canonical in-universe versions of that, I just love. There also was kind of a somewhat staged fight between Senku and Ryusui over which course across the ocean they were going to take. And then at the very end, they arrived in what once was San Francisco, and they're going to start looking for the corn so they can make the alcohol to then make the revival fluid. But as they are going upstream, they end up running into Stanley, who tries to shoot them down, which reveals to Senku's crew that there is another group of humans that broke out of the petrification, and that they have already started setting up a society in North America, and they are somewhat hostile to new people coming in. They've also realized from the fact that Stanley has a plane and a machine gun that the group from North America is slightly more technologically advanced than Senku's group. So it's very much a scientist versus scientist situation going on of Senku versus Stanley and Zeno. So for moving on to this, I am now in the middle of reading volume 18, where we have Senku, Stanley, and Zeno on the cover. I'm having so much fun. I really like the new antagonists that we've been introduced to. I love these little freaks so much. I think I mentioned in my previous video that one of the only things I really knew about Dr. Stone going into the series was Stanley and Zeno. Half of that is the fact that they are just kind of overall, I think, fan favorites and standout characters from the series, but they also are the two favorite characters of some of our best friends, and our best friends have also cosplayed these characters. So whenever I see them in the book, I'm like, those are my friends. Those are just my friends. I love those little guys. So finally officially meeting them through reading the manga is so nice. At that part I'm at right now, we are about to get Senku and Zeno's backstory, because Senku reveals that he actually knew who Zeno was back pre-petrification times, and that Zeno used to be Senku's mentor. I'm super excited to read more of this. Let me show you a couple choice photos and stuff that I was pointing out to my wife. We have this shot, which is where I just left off, when Senku is telling the group that Zeno used to be his mentor. We have another shot of Stanley looking very cool when he's got his sniper set up. We have this set of panels over here, again, of Stan just looking like the most beautiful man in the world. This set of panels with Zeno, I love seeing his kind of more refined speech pattern coming out. I kind of didn't know exactly what he would talk like. It's also very funny for me because my wife, I think is not the biggest fan of Zeno's design. She thinks that he just looks really stupid with his pompadour. I don't know, I feel it's really growing on me. He's just such a funny, scrungly little guy. I can't help but be enamored by him. We also have the introduction of the character Luna. I don't know too much about her, but I really like her design. I think she's very cute. And they even give a specific reason for why she's wearing the striped dress in her first appearance. So yes, I'm really enjoying my time reading this particular arc. I don't know how much longer this particular arc is going to go on for. I currently have checked out from the library, in addition to 17 and 18, I have volumes 19 and 20. So I think I'll definitely be reading these for this vlog, and then we'll kind of see how much further I want to go. I believe there's around 26 or 27 volumes of the series in total. So depending on how I'm feeling after reading these, we might just keep going until the end of the series. Because as I'm recording this, I believe the last episode of Dr. Stone is coming out. So for everyone that has been watching the anime for the last 6 years, they will already know and have seen the final ending. So I feel it makes sense for me to also get caught up by reading the rest of the manga. And I'm super excited because I think the last arc sounds really fun, and I really like some of the character designs of some of the characters we meet then, so I'm really excited to meet those characters as well. But for right now, I'm going to really enjoy my time with the arc that we're currently in. And yeah, I'll probably come back to you in the next couple days once I've read those volumes to give my next update. Okay, so I finished volume 18 and I also moved on to reading all of volume 19. I'm having a lot of fun. I really enjoyed both of these. Honestly, 18 might have been my favorite in the series so far. I feel like every single thing that happened, I was like enjoying my time reading it, and I was like kicking my feet, giggling, just like having a really good time. I just loved seeing the like backstory and connection of Senku and Zeno, kind of to the point where Senku is almost like a like adoptive child or like younger brother to Zeno. But at the same time, Zeno is still the villain, and he makes the choice that Senku, you know, has to die for the sake of his own goals and ambitions. I really liked then the like transition into volume 19 with Senku like kind of temporarily out of commission, the rest of them kind of figuring out how they can successfully do a like counterattack on Zeno's group. I also really like the comparison of how like Zeno has Stanley to be his like muscle and like knight to defend him, and then kind of Tsukasa is like that mirror for Senku because he is the one that breaks into Zeno's hideout and is the one that kidnaps him. At the point of the story I'm in right now, Senku's group is kind of split up into two different sections. There's the group that is going to like stay in America for the sake of developing the corn, creating more revival fluid so they can build up a larger population there, and they're going to be working with the remainder of the people staying behind from Zeno and Stanley's group. And then there's the kind of like more like main character group, which are the ones that captured Zeno, and they are taking him and going to South America, which is where they originally found the source of the petrification signal. And because Stanley obviously can't leave his boyfriend alone, is in like hot pursuit trying to find them. So I'm assuming that is going to be like the main plot for the next volume. I feel like it's interesting because even though at the end of this volume, Zeno was willing to like have Senku be killed, he's also still like happy to see that Senku is still alive. And it does seem like they're kind of going back and bonding again. Zeno also has a like conversation with Chrome that kind of fleshes out more of his worldview, but you can kind of see between his conversation with Chrome as well as like reuniting with Senku that I feel like he's becoming a little bit more like soft-hearted, sort of understanding their view of science and how it's not just like a tool for power, it's also a tool for like connection with other people. So that's very cute. I'm very excited to see him and Stanley become more like domesticated villains over time. I also think I'll probably enjoy the next arc because I do kind of like it when there's a smaller group of like main characters. It felt like there were so many people on the boat when they did the like first initial mission back in the Treasure Island arc. And now again in the arc when they were going to America, there were just like so many side characters. So I feel like them like narrowing that down a little bit more, as well as like kind of introducing some new characters, is going to give it a little bit more like breathing room so every character has a chance to shine. So yeah, that is how far I am in the volumes so far. I'm probably going to try and read volume 20 tomorrow. I also reactivated my Shonen Jump subscription just so I could read some of the volumes a little bit faster. I also was having a little bit of a like delay in when I requested things from the library for them like actually getting to me because people had some of the volumes checked out. But I did place a hold for like the last couple volumes, so my thought process is I can read 20 and then kind of like leisurely work through 21, 22, 24, and then I requested the last couple volumes from the library, so when they show up, I'll kind of have a little bit more motivation to read through until the very end of the series. So yeah, that's my update for right now, and I'll probably come back to you in the next couple days with my next reading update. Hi, so I actually am at work right now because I slightly messed up. Got a notification that volumes 24 and 25 were due back in my library, and then when I looked into it, they are on hold for someone else, so I can't renew them. I checked these out 3 weeks ago thinking I would have more time to read them, but honestly I've only gotten up to finishing volume 22. I finished that this last weekend, and I was able to renew volume 23, so I'll probably still read that one physically, and then these ones I will return to my library. I was able to request the final volume, which is volume 26, from my library, so maybe at the same time that I drop these off, they will have that one available for me to pick up, but I am going to have to return these. I'm doing this update at work because I have to go straight from work to the library to drop these off. I'll probably give a more in-depth review of my experience reading volumes 20, 21, and 22 in another update, but I am still enjoying the series. I think this last stretch of volumes was pretty interesting. If there was anything that kind of took me by surprise, it was just how aggressive Stanley's group was. I wasn't expecting them to like fully go in and be like killing these teenagers. It's just so interesting because as much as Zeno is the villain, I feel like at the same time he really does like and respect Senku, but obviously Stanley has a very one-track mind. His main goal is to get Zeno back by any means necessary. That's just him in his role as a soldier doing his job. But at the end, you know, when they decide they're going to do another like mass petrification, he's kind of like accepting of the fact that he is going to be imprisoned and that Senku's group is the ones that really like won the war. He kind of has a lot of like respect for them for being able to finally defeat him. So I'm interested in seeing how all of this is going to translate, because I do know that everyone gets unpetrified, including Stanley. I guess we kind of already have seen it a couple times in the series with Tsukasa and Hyoga, these characters that are pretty villainous and willing to kill, but then obviously becoming like domesticated villains and being friends with Senku and the group. And even now we did have a couple occasions where people were kind of hesitant around Hyoga and feeling like he might be the most likely candidate to switch sides, and them not wanting him to interact with Zeno so that Zeno could kind of like whisper something in his ear to make him betray Senku's group. But you know, Hyoga kind of like stood strong and still was on their side and working with them. Anyway, that's my quick update right now. I'm hoping I can read some more over the weekend, and definitely when I get the last volume in from my library, we will do a little like reaction of me reading the end of the series. Good morning, gamers. I am just finishing up my makeup for the day. We were actually going to go out later today for our friend's birthday party, so I thought I would give you a little update while I get ready. As you probably saw in some of the B-roll, I went out last night for a little date night with my wife. We stopped by a Barnes & Noble because I saw that they had the 6th volume of Heaven Official's Blessing in stock. So I did pick up the special edition of that. Very excited to get to this. I'm really hoping that I can read the rest of the series sometime this year. We had gone out to dinner, and then afterwards we went to go see The Odyssey, and it was actually really good. I feel like I had heard pretty mixed things about it, but in general I do really like a lot of other Christopher Nolan movies, but I also just like really love Greek mythology and like Greek epic related stuff, so I had pretty high hopes, and I feel like they definitely delivered. I thought the costuming was really, really good, as well as some of the like monster designs. And I thought the way that the story was told also kept it like always moving and being engaging, despite the fact that the movie is like almost 3 hours long. I didn't really feel like it dragged until like maybe the very, very end, maybe the last like 4th or 5th of the movie. So for the most part, I was really having a good time. Since I'm filming this during like the first weekend that the movie is out, I have no idea how it's doing overall, like financially. I feel like it was projected to do super well, but maybe some of the initial box office was a little disappointing. However, I do think it feels like a movie that not only was expensive, but like actually does look expensive, which is definitely like the preferred way of going about that. I feel like I see so many posts about how like movies that were really expensive in like the early 2000s actually looked expensive, and that just isn't the case anymore. But I feel like this is a movie that definitely was expensive and also still looks expensive. Also, I gave like a non-spoiler review to my dear friend that loves Dr. Stone because we were mentioning that we were going to go see it. And I was like, I could see and hear things, which to be honest is kind of a low bar, but at the same time, I feel like so many movies are really, really dark, or the sound mixing is really, really bad nowadays. And Christopher Nolan in the past has had issues with both of those things, so the fact that I could hear and see and understand the entire movie, I feel like is a testament to the fact that it actually is pretty good. So that's my little movie wrap up for so far. Now I thought I would talk a little bit of my experience in reading Dr. Stone. So I did read volume 23 a couple days ago. Just some of my general thoughts from like volumes like 21 through 23. I think I had been spoiled of this part, I think in just like seeing character designs, but the fact that Suika is like one of the only characters that awakens and then has to kind of like re-figure out how to make the revival fluid all on her own when she's like, you know, a 8 or 9-year-old girl with not a lot of like inherent scientific knowledge the same way Senku is. I thought was a really interesting element. But it is like really sad thinking of the fact that she was basically alone without any other human contact for 7 years. Although I feel like they tried to kind of downplay maybe the psychological effects that had on her, because she was still like kind of talking to all of the petrified forms of the other characters, and they had kind of like left her clues in things they had like written down like on them that she could then use to kind of like progress her own scientific work as she made the revival fluid. So it felt like they were still like in communication with her. I think it's really interesting though in the, you know, time jump that now she is a teenager like the rest of them. Although I think at this point, since some of the characters have aged out, they're probably in like their early 20s from the start of the series. Like I'm pretty sure they say at one point that Senku is around 18 or 19. When he was first petrified, he was only 15. So time is like moving forward in the story. But yeah, I thought that was an interesting choice to kind of like age Suika up and just kind of like add that question of the fact that as these characters that are revived and breaking out of their petrification, the rest of the world is still in that stasis. So I think Kohaku even says like eventually she's going to become like the older sister to her older sister because her sister is still petrified. And with the character Kaseki, who's like the old man that's traveling with them, they were like, oh, maybe we should have like waited to like de-petrify him last, because obviously the longer that he's outside of his stasis, the more he's aging and the closer he is to possibly passing away. But then it also seems like they have kind of realized that the petrification process is almost a way to like completely cheat death, in that it seems like it's possible to even like revive someone that has recently died if they're petrified, I guess like within a couple minutes or like an hour of the death taking place, because that is what happened to Hyoga. Although I feel like that's a little bit of like up in the air hearsay. It seems that Tsukasa is pretty sure that Hyoga had died when the petrification happened, but then obviously he comes depetrified and is fine. I feel like there must be something else going on there, because I guess it's not really clear if the petrification works only on living people, or is it like every like corpse that existed is also petrified and turned to stone whether they're living or not. Because they did show early on that if a piece of a person breaks off and then is unpetrified and it's not attached to a person, it just becomes like dead flesh. So kind of not really sure the like chain reaction that goes on with all of that. Talking specifically about volume 23 here, I did feel like the kind of reasoning to get Zeno on their side was a little bit quick. Kind of similarly the same like problem I had with Tsukasa. I do feel like this one was kind of like a matter of pride, where Zeno was just like both like threatened and interested in everything that went on with the petrification and the threat of Y-Man, that he is willing to kind of put his own ambitions to the side for the sake of getting some type of revenge. As well as the fact that I think he realized, as surely as Stanley realized when the petrification was happening, that Senku's group, the kids, they kind of won the war. They were the ones that were able to kind of like set the tone of the post-revival period. So there isn't really anything that Zeno can do independently, especially while they have Stanley as a hostage. And at the same time, I feel like he realizes that he likes working alongside Senku, and it did also seem like from the very beginning that he didn't really want to kill Senku. He just kind of saw it as like a means to an end. So the fact that they are, you know, like working together and kind of getting back to that original mentor-mentee place is really, really nice, and I like seeing them work together. I realized I just like kind of by default started doing a like brown smoky eye. I honestly was going to do something different for my makeup today, but it's fine. I can still make this work. At the point we're at right now, a lot of the groups have kind of like split up as they've been establishing the different cities for the sake of making the rocket ship to eventually go to the moon and confront Y-Man. And kind of Senku's main group, they are going to India because they want to find a like mathematics school there for the sake of trying to like rebuild some type of rudimentary computer, since they need to do calculations for the actual like moon mission. And when they are there, we meet Ryusui's older half-brother Sai, who is a like coding mathematics genius. I think he is so cute. I knew ahead of time that a lot of people really, really liked his character. I think he also was a character that did not show up until the very last season that just came out of Dr. Stone. So a lot of people were really anticipating him coming to the anime. I think I said this before in the previous video, but I really like the crack design element of kind of like the cracks being reminiscent of the wear and tear that they had when they were petrified. And Sai's cracks kind of manifest as him having a lot of damage and like this fully like blackened, cracked hand, which we had kind of like a variation of that as well. But yeah, I just really, really like the way it looks. I think it's a really cool design element. Another thing that was kind of mentioned is that being petrified and then revived multiple times will get rid of those cracks as the petrification heals you more and more, which we kind of see also with Zeno. He used to have like very, very deep black markings across his entire face, but now they're a lot more fine and not as like intense, which I think is a fun like kind of delineation of like his two different like time periods. So that's kind of where I am at in the story so far. Like I said before, I had to return some of the volumes to the library because they were actually on hold from someone else, so I couldn't renew them. But I do still have my Shonen Jump subscription activated. I'm hoping that I can probably only keep it activated for like one more month and I can cancel it. So my goal is to probably read volumes 24 and 25 sometime this weekend. And then I have a hold for the final volume 26 at my library, so hopefully I can pick that up in the next couple days once I get like an email notification that it's ready. And I'm really hoping that I can then read the majority of the last volume together with you guys. Okay, so I think I am almost done with my makeup now. I'm gonna go finish getting ready, and I'll probably pop in the next couple days once I have my next reading update. So I wanted to give you an update in reading Dr. Stone. I honestly had hoped that this update would be like my final one, but my library still hasn't had the final volume ready for me to pick up, so I want to like wait until I can like read it physically and do like a kind of like filmed reaction of the last couple chapters with you guys. So I'm holding off on that. However, today I did read all of volume 24 and I'm a couple chapters into volume 25. The last volume I read, volume 24, I really enjoyed. I feel like I really like the parts in Dr. Stone that are more like in between the main villains, the like man versus nature type of scenarios where they're trying to use science to figure out a problem. And I feel like that was a big element of the last volume, with them trying to basically like reinvent computers and using very like early computer technology. I've really liked all of the character interactions we've seen so far, especially with Ryusui and Sai and their relationship with one another. I feel like it might be something that kind of has been like retconned, having Ryusui be a illegitimate son of the Nanami Corporation, the same way Sai is. Whereas I feel like earlier on it was very much heavy-handed that Ryusui was the one that was going to be the heir of the Nanami Corporation. But now they've kind of written it so that him and Sai were both somewhat outcasts. And that is another reason why Ryusui is very attached to Sai and always was trying to involve him in things when they were kids, because he really wanted to have this brotherly connection with someone, and Sai was the only one who could kind of really relate to him on that element. I thought that was very cute for their development. I also still really, really like Chelsea. I think I sent this in my last update, but I find her very similar to me. We're very like blunt, straightforward, use like kind of a lot of slang in the way that we talk. She's probably the character out of all of them that I feel like I could see myself cosplaying, most of them us being very similar in personality. There's some other characters I like their design a little bit more, but I feel like Chelsea is probably the one I would be most interested in cosplaying for my love of her character specifically. Like I just said, I really liked volume 24. The only problem with it was that there was only honestly maybe like one or two panels of Zeno because he's kind of separated from the main group. However, now that I've gone into reading volume 25, a lot of the main characters have kind of like reconvened for the test launching of the rockets that they've been assembling. And Zeno and Senku are back together working on troubleshooting all of the issues with the rocket. One thing I've been enjoying in the volume so far is that we've seen Zeno sweat, I feel like, a little bit more than he's done in the past. Like, him and Senku kind of collectively are more stressed and surprised with some of the issues that have been coming up with the rocket. Obviously, since they feel like they've done all of the science to make it work perfectly on paper, but there's just another kind of unpredictable element that's been coming up while they've been doing the rocket testing, and I feel like it's really cute to see their reaction shots for that. So those are some of my observations so far. I am hoping that I can pick up the last volume, hopefully sometime this week, so that next weekend I can read it with you guys, and then we'll do a kind of final wrap up for the end of the story, as well as my thoughts on the series overall. Okay, so I have about 6 or so chapters left in reading Dr. Stone. I am reading it on my iPad through the Shonen Jump app because I think something happened with the last volume at my library. I don't know if it's like lost or actually checked out, but my hold was taking forever and I wasn't able to see like any like status updates for it. It just said waiting the entire time. So I was like, you know what? It's fine if I don't have the physical volume to finish off this reading vlog. I can still read it on camera while using my iPad. So we're just gonna do it that style. I have the chapters pulled up. I'm gonna kind of get cozy sitting here and we're going to read through the last couple chapters of Dr. Stone together. I'm also turning on autofocus so I can get a little cozy and move around. So if it gets really out of focus, it's not my fault. I should also mention the part I'm at right now. They just landed on the moon. So I think the final like confrontation with Y-Man is probably going to happen in the next like 2 or 3 chapters. So I thought this would be a good place to start filming, even though I technically have started volume 26 at this point. Anyway, let's get into reading. Interesting. This is not necessarily the direction I thought they were going to go for with what Y-Man is, but I find it very interesting. I really like the hive mind element. I like the element of like the Medusas themselves being Y-Man. Honestly, it's giving a little Pluribus energy in the fact that they can't understand why humans wouldn't want petrification, and the fact that they're kind of like a parasite that just wants to spread as much as possible throughout the entire world and galaxy. I'm having fun. This is pretty good. Oh, shoots. Oh my god, there's so many of them. Whoa, okay. Oh, this art is so cute. I do like that it really seems that the final confrontation is just going to be Senku negotiating with Y-Man. Oh my god, this art is also beautiful. I do like reading the digital version just because you get all of the color. Oh, they're so squad. Oh, so cute. Oh my god, it's her parents. That's so cute. Oh my god, I like this like same parallel of like the very beginning of Taiju bursting in on Senku doing his like experiment in the first volume. So the last chapter I have here is, I think, just like a one-shot, so I might actually not read this right now. Oh yeah, because this is out of 51. This is like way longer than the normal chapter. Okay, I think I'm technically done with Dr. Stone, so I'm gonna go take a quick break and then we'll come back to recap. Okay, so I just finished reading the last couple chapters of Dr. Stone, so I guess let's do a recap on it. I think I'm going to talk briefly about like my experience reading volumes 25 and 26, and then I'll get into talking about my thoughts on the series overall. I have a couple things I really loved. Obviously, I really liked when they decided to bring back Stanley, like free him from petrification, because they made the realization that they need someone who's basically like the best marksman in the world for the sake of the mission. And as good as Ryusui is a pilot, and he could really fulfill that role out of the 3 people that were going to go to the moon, he is not as good as marksman as Stanley is, so he kind of like capitulates and realizes that as much as he really, really wants to be one of the 3 people going, and he kind of has that element of self-sacrifice that he is willing to put aside his desire to go to the moon for the sake of the betterment of the mission overall. And of course, the second that Stan wakes up, he's like, what's the job? Him and Zeno have a moment that's like, there's no heterosexual explanation for this. And then he's immediately down to, you know, put all of his differences aside and work to be a part of the Kingdom of Science now. I feel like overall, I've really enjoyed the last couple volumes with the pursuit of the spaceship as the end goal. I liked seeing them kind of like build on the previous concepts we've seen in older chapters, with the scientific advancements getting more and more complex. I also think it's really interesting how they also weave in petrification and how they use the Medusa as like a tool to also aid in the space mission, because they're basically like, all of the 3 astronauts that are going to go up into space are going to be petrified while they're doing the takeoff, and then they have kind of like a timer set up that they'll be revived after they get into space, which is kind of like a 2-for-1 of them not having any like mental or physical strain while they're going and leaving the atmosphere. But it's also kind of like a failsafe that if the rocket does explode and their bodies get like shattered into a bunch of like rock pieces, they can just like put them all back together and then try again, which is something we have seen before. If a person is like smashed to pieces while they're in their stone petrified form, they can be like glued back together and de-petrified and be completely normal. Anyway, the three characters that go up into space is Senku, obviously, as the main character. Then we have Kohaku as the warrior, and Stanley as the pilot / marksman. Another scene I really liked is when they first get into space. Senku was the first one that gets revived, and he gets told by Zeno that he basically was set up so that he would wake up before the other two, just to give him a like kind of quiet moment of like reflection, because, you know, Senku's father was also an astronaut. And then when Stanley wakes up a little bit later, Senku accuses him. He's like, I know you and Zeno plotted together on this. And Stanley's like, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm just a soldier following orders. I'm not going to be doting on you. And it's like, no, they are his stepfathers. Stanley and Zeno are so like dad that stepped up coded. Yes, I know they were trying to kill all of those teenagers like 4 volumes ago, but now they're so domesticated villain, and they're really like, I feel like thriving in this more like parental role for Senku. I feel like also there's been at least like 1 or 2 times where characters have said to Zeno directly, hey, you don't have to like play the villain role anymore. Like they know just deep down that Zeno is on their side, that he's kind of bonded with them. I think that's really, really adorable. Anyway, when they finally do get to the moon and the like black spot on the moon that they believe is the location of Y-Man, they find out that Y-Man is actually the Medusas themselves. It's not just a tool that Y-Man has been using. They are some type of like sentient biotech that is some type of like alien hive mind that travels around to different planets for the purpose of spreading petrification. The Y-Men see petrification as like a biological imperative to try and survive no matter what, since basically being petrified puts you in a state of stasis and like in some ways eternal life because you're not dead or alive. So the Y-Men are very confused as to why humans would want to break free of petrification. They see petrification as almost like a gift to humanity. They also measure radio waves as like a symbol of how developed a species is. One thing I think the Y-Men didn't really factor into when they first like landed on Earth and petrified everyone is the fact that since they are made out of metal, oxygen is like technically toxic to them. They will eventually oxidize and die. So on Earth, they're not really at their full potential and aren't able to speak as freely as they are in space. The ending kind of like confrontation that happens is Senku has a one-on-one conversation with Y-Man, and Y-Man decide that they are going to leave Earth and try and find a different planet to petrify instead. But the one Medusa that they've been carrying all this time and using is the one that decides to stay behind, kind of to like impart its technological knowledge to Senku's group. The confrontation is not very big or flashy. It's much more low-key, you know, Senku using his science knowledge and I guess like negotiation skills to convince Y-Men that they were wrong in their pursuit of petrifying Earth. I did feel a little bit anticlimactic in their like decision to leave. I do think there definitely was some like beautiful imagery that I would be interested in seeing how that translates in the anime version. And the very end of the series, which I thought was very cute, is a like flash forward several years later where they've kind of reestablished society. People have like cars and modern clothes and everything. And it ends with Taiju and Yuzuriha's wedding, which I think is so cute. Okay, now I think I'm going to give some of my like overall thoughts on the series. So I think Inagaki, who's the author, I feel like he tends to be a little utilitarian in his characters, and maybe was just like more focused on the science side and wanting to confront all those science-related questions over having all of his characters be super fleshed out. I do also think it's just also a common element in shonen manga of like always needing to be moving and like introducing new characters and like new obstacles that like lends itself for characters to turn into one-trick ponies. I do think the one exception to that rule is Senku. I feel like he is very fleshed out in that we see how much his past affects him. And I feel like a very interesting like emotional through line for the whole series is Senku's relationship with his dad Byakuya. Just how much Byakuya instilled so much hope and trust in him. And really everything that both of them do is for the sake of each other. When Byakuya was one of the only humans awake on Earth, he was really doing everything he could to set Senku up for success. And then in the Stone World timeline, Senku is like really wanting to not let his father's death be in vain, and is really promising to make the most of everything Byakuya sacrificed for the sake of saving the rest of humanity. I just really like that element. Despite my critiques with the character stuff, I do also really like all of the science stuff that goes on. I really like it when they will bring up like, hey, this is a technique people used in the 1800s or in ancient times. I feel like it grounds the story in some level of like, hey, maybe this is believable as something we could do again if our modern world was in this situation. As much as I do think that the final confrontation was a little bit of a letdown, I was explaining the like vibe of Y-Man and the petrification to my wife, and she was so interested in the like sci-fi alien hive mind element of the story. I do think those elements are very cool. And I said as I was reading that it kind of reminded me a little bit of Pluribus in the like seemingly benevolent hive mind that is doing something for the sake of humanity, but actually is like harming humanity at the same time. I don't know, I guess if you're interested in Dr. Stone, maybe check out Pluribus, because I feel like there are some similar themes going on there. I also wanted to talk really quickly about some of my favorite characters. Even though some characters are a little one-dimensional, I feel like I still do like a lot of them. I mentioned before how I really like Chelsea. I feel like she's the character that is the most similar to me, just being very like loud and blunt and using a lot of slang. Plus I like her design a lot. Also, as much as I knew I was going to, like the boys for the sake that my friends really like them, I grew to just like independently really, really love Dr. Zeno. He is just like so scrungly and so weird in a lot of different ways, but I just like love his character and his relationship with Senku. I think they have such an interesting dynamic, both in the time periods when they are like antagonistic to each other, and then seeing them work together at the same time. I think it's a pretty unique dynamic, and I really, really like the way that it was executed here. I do wish that there were some characters that we got to see more of. I really like Amaryllis. I was sad that her and some of the other island characters from Treasure Island didn't really get as much development after that arc was over. But I love her design, I love her personality, I think she's so cute. I also feel like as much as I really liked Sai when he was first introduced, I don't really feel like he had as much to play of a role in the end as I would have liked. Maybe that's just a factor of him being introduced only in the last like 3 volumes of the manga. We didn't get to see as many like kind of side arcs or like side moments with him as we did with some of the characters that were introduced from the very beginning. But yeah, overall, those are my thoughts in reading Dr. Stone. I had so much fun reading this series, and I guess technically I do have a little bit more to read because there is a one-shot and I think like a possible like separate side story. I believe at least one of those 2 things is going to be adapted into a movie since the anime recently ended in June. I'll be very interested in seeing if that ends up like coming to theaters in the US or not. But yeah, that is going to be it for this video and for this reading vlog. I hope you guys enjoyed coming along with me on this journey of reading this series. If you guys enjoyed this video, consider liking, commenting, or subscribing if you aren't already. Consider following me on the story graph if you'd like to see my reading updates in real time, as well as following my Bookstagram, which is linked in the description. And that is going to be it for me today. I hope you guys all have a wonderful day, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye!